Welcome everyone to the final last session in stage 1 for this year's Booking Manager Summit. I'm very happy to announce our biggest troublemaker, but he's amazing, Mark Adams.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. How do I begin? What a picture there, fuck. Genuinely, I can't teach you anything. I know, you got 45 minutes left. You know when you come and you're like, shit, I should have chosen the other room. Because storytelling is one of those things, it's kind of like, yeah, I've got a business to run. Like, I don't really have time for storytelling. Like, people think, rightfully, like storytelling's for kids or it's, what you do in your spare time. But the kind of tragedy of what we all do, because we all have to sell. We just have to. I don't think we like it necessarily. Maybe we do, but is that the more we know about something, sometimes that means we connect less, right? So you guys will know so much about what you do. I know nothing about the things you know. But sometimes we get further and further away from the people we're trying to connect with, the more we know. So it's almost like and there's a tragedy in that, right? Because the more professional we get, the more into the corner we kind of end up until less and less of the room understands what the fuck we're talking about, right? So I'm from Essex, just outside London, and every single person from Essex is a failed DJ, right? Like, you have to be. And so, if we get into a conversation about music, I'm like just waiting for the moment to go like really deep into like this one record label from the early 2000s that makes like Berlin techno. And by that point, there's just me and maybe one other person left in that conversation. Everyone else is like, I'm just gonna go for a cigarette, right? So ironically, the more I know about something, maybe the less I'm able to connect. And I think the reason why storytelling is important is because I think it begins with a fundamental empathy for the listener. And I think it also forces us, in a really good way, to edit what we're going to say, to try and get past the kind of the stuff that makes us feel clever to the shit that people really need to hear, right? So just turn to one another now, and I'll come and annoy you. In fact, I'll annoy both of you. Who are you when you are not at work? Right? So if you were being you around a table at 2 o'clock in the morning, sharing a cigarette, even though you don't smoke, right? Who are you then? What do you love? What kind of stuff do you spend way too much energy on, way too much time on, maybe even way too much money on? Like, for me, it's like, I'm like a failed, like music producer as well as DJ. So I have all the equipment, but no clue. I'm like Ross from Friends. I'll be like pressing moo, ba, I send these tracks to my friends. They're like, this is so bad. But I love it, right? And no one can convince me not to love it. And I spend way too much energy, way too much time, way too much money on it, right? So just turn to each other. Who are you when you're not at work? And the reason for this is not some icebreaker, I promise you. The reason for this, hi guys, hi. The reason for this genuinely is there's so much to unlock when it's time to sell. And what we do, because we want to be professional, is we think, no, we've got to leave that stuff behind, right? So just turn to each other and let's get into it. And let's group together and we'll form a little three here. Okay, do you want to come over here? All right, guys, go for it. How you doing? What's your name? James. Pleasure, man. I'm Mark. What's your name? Pleasure. Hi. What's your name? Pleasure. Eleanor. Pleasure. So go for it. You go first.
I don't know.
What do you do when you're not working? Just for fun, just for you.
I'm going to the gym.
The gym? Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm watching Netflix, read books.
Netflix. Anything in particular you like in TV shows? Yeah.
Just, I don't know, dramatic series.
Yeah. Bit of drama. Yeah?
Drama.
You like high drama? Amazing. And then what about books? What kind of books?
Yeah. More.
Fiction or
No fiction. No, no, no. Stories.
stories?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stories.
I like it. A bit of drama. I like that. What would you say?
In my time, I read books.
Yeah. Books?
I have my son.
Of course. You should take an interest in him, I think.
He needs a lot of time.
Yes. How old is he?
He's 10 years old.
Amazing. Yeah.
Oh, also I'm cleaning my house.
Cleaning your house. I like this. This is good.
So reading books, go out with him,
Yeah.
your walks.
Yeah. Walks. Being in nature. Yeah.
We sail together.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes, we do things together, everything.
Yes. Yeah, I bet. At 10 years old, you do everything together. Yeah.
Yes, we have everything we have with him, with us.
Amazing. And when you get time just on your own, just to read, what do you read? What kind of stuff?
I read books.
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything.
I can read everything.
Yeah. But like fiction, stories? We're going to always think of you as drama now.
Historical.
Historical. Interesting. Okay, I like this. What would you say? What do you do in your spare time?
I am a voracious reader.
Amazing. So we've already got 3 readers here.
Love a story.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I studied English literature. I read a lot of
Amazing.
literary criticism as well. So
Wow.
I go kind of nerdy.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
music,
that's
music.
fantastic.
And
I love that. You don't just read the book, you read the criticism of the book.
yeah,
That's fantastic. My mum's an English literature teacher as
I've
well,
got
yeah.
a biography of the reader that's like that thick.
It's
on my
fantastic.
bookshelf. Yeah, but yeah. So I love that stuff. I kind of think if I wasn't working in the horticulture industry, I'd probably be working in academia somewhere as an English teacher or.
Yeah, I can see, I can imagine you'd be good at that, genuinely.
I like. I mean, it's kind of why I'm intrigued to see how the rest of your talk goes.
Yeah,
'cause
exactly.
Storytelling is I think, just a human kind of necessity.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm really passionate about that. And then, like on my weekends and stuff, I like to. I mean, it's why I work in this industry is I like to go sailing.
Yeah.
So I go out on a boat with my friend. My best friend has a little 32-foot yacht, and we go out racing every
Amazing.
weekend. So
Amazing.
Like, yeah, I've got that.
But isn't that interesting that all of us, I mean, I would have said the same.
What are you doing?
Yeah, honestly, music definitely takes over a lot, but I also think that's kind of storytelling as well. I'm trying to write a book, but mine wouldn't be as interesting as any of these. Like, I'm just trying to write a book of things I should have written a long time ago about things, experiences and stuff. But it's just interesting that you guys don't know each other, right? And yet we all came up with, people ended up saying, oh, everybody said reading, right? So I'm gonna break the thing down. Guys, so sorry. Here we go. So, honestly, I'm not just doing that for some kind of thing to buy myself time, even though maybe I am. No. And we had a really interesting discussion, the 4 of us. I'd love to hear, before I come back to pick on my new friends, what did you guys say?
Basically, we were discussing what we would discuss at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
being
okay.
drunk,
Yes.
which was what we were doing 2 days ago.
Okay, so you've been in this position. Yeah, it's good to have real experience of it. Yeah. And what kind of stuff were you saying?
Languages. She was telling me about the languages she speaks
Amazing. What languages do you speak?
and politics.
Wow, awesome. And you were talking about politics. That's dangerous. Yeah.
Languages and
But
politics.
you have a passion for politics?
I think he has a
Yeah.
bigger question.
Amazing. So that's interesting, right? So, I mean, take this the right way, but like, in their own spare time, people want to talk about politics, right? I'm the same. I'm exactly the same as you. I'm like checking the news at the moment to see what's happening in the midterms all the time. Like, I hope you don't mind me saying, but we went down the kind of the rabbit hole of a few things. We had fitness, we had reading. Everybody said reading, right? And actually, my friend James here actually said he doesn't just read books. He reads the criticisms of the books to try and understand the themes of the book even more. And not just the criticisms as in it wasn't good, but like the real deep analysis. What about you guys? What did you say?
What do we say about what?
What did you say about, what do you do in your spare time? Your spare time?
So I'm studying kinesiology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So and
What is that?
sorry.
What is that?
It's a sports science.
Oh, sports science. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Shows you what I know, right? Yeah.
I'm on a sailing specialization,
Amazing.
and almost all my spare time I spend on sailing.
Yeah. So this is the interesting thing, right? You guys are not fucking lawyers or bankers or pharmacists, or you're in something that is inherently passionate, right? I mean, I wonder even if you choose this industry or if it chooses you. Do you know what I mean? Like this is not, you're in a space that isn't very, and I mean this with love, it isn't rational. So my thing would be, you know how I said, like, the more you know about something, the more you go into the corner, so less and less people kind of connect with it. I honestly think that as you get into something, you distance yourself from normal people sometimes because you know so much. Your mind is so full of data and information about something. And you can be like, well, you know, the reason why this particular sale is made this way is because in normal people, fair enough, if they're really hardcore, you need to be able to know that information. But normal people are like, but what's really true about what you guys do is it is a passion, right? Hopefully, I pray that you have a passion for it somewhere, and I bet you do. I absolutely bet you do. So my first thing today is I would say storytelling, the first rule of storytelling is you're trying, imagine you were an AI analyzing words, analyzing sentences. You have the permission to use not just logical and rational language, but emotional language, right? Because what you're essentially doing, I don't even think I have a clicker, but what you're essentially doing, and this is a great example here, whatever. So, you know, like, this is a bunch of random words, right? And this, honestly, people, you would never imagine how little people actually take of the information you give them. This is human, right? We are not very well built for that. AI is built for that. We are not good at retaining information. So if you give me, anyone, a lot of information, you can expect, honestly, it's about 3% of it will stick. And yet when we turn that information into some even basic structure, which is what a story is, it starts to stick. That's the glue, right? So they're the same words, but one of them creates an insanely different recall. And really, what I think we need to do, and what storytelling really is, this is a great experiment back in the day, was, look at this. This is a beautiful graph, right? This is so well designed. You think about your brochures or your sales materials, right? It's expressed. And then this is a story of a little girl. And they have exactly the same information in them. But one of them performed very, very well versus the other. And it isn't the one you expect, right? Because you look at it and you think, actually, one of them looks like it's very colorful, it's pictures. You would think that would perform better. But actually what was really interesting was that the little story of the story of the little girl, Rokia, is the same information. Exactly the same information is expressed. And yet, you're literally talking about 3 times the results. So here's the thing. Honestly, like I said at the beginning, I don't think I can teach you anything, but I can just remind you of something. And what I'd love to remind you about is human beings were literally built for stories. Like, if we had all day, I couldn't even scratch the surface of the story of stories. Because at the end of the day, the written word, the Gutenberg press, the ability to print things, the ability to write things, even stone tablets are like, even a stone tablet, like Moses writing the commandments in stone, right? That's some new school technology compared to the history of humankind. We have been running about trying to transfer information to each other for a very long time. And for like 98% of that time, we didn't have any tools. The only way you could say to someone, don't go and eat the berries from that bush, would be, that bush is cursed. Don't go. Do you see what I mean? The ghost of the thing that used to live here is da-da. You'd have to turn it into a story so that people go, right. So the evolutionary mind has developed to essentially take stories in and then process the information within them, not take in information without the plasma of the story around it. So this is where it gets kind of fun because anyway, look, I mean, this is just interesting. Like, look at, say, what's bigger, Elon Musk or Tesla? What's bigger, Bill Gates or Microsoft? What's bigger, Steve Jobs or Apple? If you look at all the social accounts of all these things, the company will always have 1 million, and the person will have like 50 million. So the irony is, people do buy people at the end of the day, much more than we think. And I'm not going to, I think this is probably the real key to this. I want you to think about the information or whatever you're trying to communicate as a hierarchy. Like at the very kind of end of it, you've got signals, right? So you're basically just going like, a signal would be like a banner ad saying like, want a yacht? It's just a signal. It's basically like, yo, Above that, you've got data. So if you're in a pitch situation and you're hitting people with a lot of information, that's good. If they've asked for it, that's absolutely great. But if it's your first instinct to just kind of reel off that information, that data, you're missing an opportunity, right? And what we tend to think is and this is kind of sad, all of us do this, all of us think that the more professional you are, the more you know your shit on data and information. And that is true too. I'm not saying it's not. You should know it if you get asked it, right? But really, once you start getting above that to knowledge would be the difference between saying, this boat is, I don't, as you can probably tell, I know nothing about this, but the motor on this boat is this specification, right? That would be information and data, right? Knowledge would be, and the guy that founded this, his insight was that the way that this works, even in really difficult waters, is da-da-da-da. That's knowledge, right? It's like you know the story behind the information and the data. But that is still table stakes, right? That's okay, it's decent, but where you really want to get to, and this is where people find it hard, I'm not going to lie, what you really want to get to is, and this is why I asked you about who you are, is you want to get to the point where you're bringing a bit of you into the stories, into the sale, right? And a lot of people, they don't want to do this. But the results are so different, right? So if I tell you, why do I love electronic music? Because rightfully, you could say it's some of the worst music ever made, and it genuinely is. A lot of electronic music is by far the worst electronic music in the world, right? But if I say to you, there was a club called the Bath House in Chicago, right? And there was a DJ called Frankie Knuckles, and he was a black gay guy, right? And it was never really a good time to be a black gay guy in America, and especially not in the late 70s, right? And he would go and play music to black gay guys in this place, the Bath House, and then there was this, this mood of the nation that the hard right, as they often do, they turned against disco. They were like, this is corrosive to family values, right? Because the worst thing, they didn't, a right-wing senator did not like coming home and seeing his wife and her friends boogieing to like black gay music, right? They were like, this is terrible. This is against everything, right? So they started to put money behind radio stations to not play disco anymore. And they started this whole campaign called Disco Sucks. You can Google this. Google Disco Sucks. You literally see like massive arenas of white Americans piling their wives' disco records onto fires, like some shit out of the Nazi era, right? And so this got to the point where this money behind this movement, Disco Sucks, started to say to local police forces, we will give you the funding that you've asked for to get more officers, to get more, but you got to do something for us. Shut down this disco thing anywhere you see it, anywhere you hear it, right? Because we don't want this in our nation, right? So every week, Frankie Knuckles would be doing his little disco DJ set in the bathhouse, and the police would turn up, bang, kick everything in, rough everybody up a little bit, smash the stuff up, and leave, and say, we don't want to see you next week. And every week, in defiance, they would do it again. And then one week, Frankie Knuckles was like, I've got to figure this out. So he went to Detroit, and he bought this machine. Now, this is pure data and information I'm giving you here, right? This is really boring. Like, he bought this thing called a Roland 909 drum machine. It's basically the most basic machine ever for making beats. It goes, it's crap. But what he did was, he basically figured out that he could time that beat over the top of the disco record he was playing. So when the police turned up, he could take the disco record out, and it would just be, and all of the police would be like, we can't shut this down. This is not disco music. And the police referred to it as that techno shit, right? Which basically gave birth to a new type of music called techno, right? And then over time, he learned that he could like put effects on it, so it'd be, and he could fuck with it, right? And the sound of the police getting back in their cars and driving off, and everybody essentially going, fuck you, we get to party on, and Frankie Knuckles bringing the disco record back over that boom, 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 became known as house music. And that is why we have house music now, right? So now, why am I telling you that? Because it's got a lot of information in it. It's actually got even like really boring data in it, like a Roland 909 drum machine and what it does, right? But it's also covered in the plasma of a story. And hopefully, even if you despise electronic music, you can at least understand a little bit of the reason why I kind of like it, not just because it's good music. Do you see what I mean? So like, hopefully now you're thinking, oh, hang on, this is about community. It's not about music, right? So hopefully you get to the point where that is an insight. It's not just knowledge. Yeah, it's good to know that story. That's good knowledge, right? It's got lots of information in it. It's got lots of data in it. But it's really the transfer of an insight. And what I'd love you to do now, we'll get back in our groups again. You know, I hope you don't mind, but like, you gave me an insight there where you said, I don't just like books. I like to understand what other thinkers think about the same books I've read. You guys got into this industry for a reason, right? You will have your origin stories. You will have your stories that came from a customer last week that somewhere in the back of your head, you don't really realize how valuable that is. They're the things that when you said, oh, you know what, I'm going to give this up because of the pandemic, you know, why did you continue? So what I'd love you to do is have a think, just literally just play with this and see if you can get to the point where you can diversify on the imagine we were to hear your pitch or your sales technique, right? And imagine we printed it all out. By the way, there's something called otter.ai where you can transcribe. So basically, you can stick it on your phone, you can talk, and it will transcribe as you're speaking. And I say to all salespeople, do this. Then go through with a highlighter, highlight all the information, highlight all the data, highlight all the knowledge that's the information behind the information, and see how many times do you use language that would be kind of an insight. And an insight is hairs on your arm start to go up, right? It's like something where people go, ooh, I get it. And basically, all of the studies of sales say the more you go towards an insight, the more you sell. So basically, it's almost like a little bell you've got to ring, right? If you ring that emotional bell, because human beings are not rational, right? So when you're coming at them with all this stuff down the bottom, that's all the rational stuff. If you start using stories and insights, literally it goes past someone's rational filter. And literally all of the studies show the more times you ring that bell or that hit that insight where people go, ooh, get it, the higher the likelihood of sales. So just for fun, try this. It's not easy, right? And it will go against everything you'll be like, oh, I don't want to do it. But somewhere there is a story, even if it's just from last week with that person who had their birthday and you did this and you went that extra mile and they made you feel like, yeah, you know what, that was great. Play that just for 2 minutes and we'll talk about what we get, okay? Right, let's go. It's hard, this.
So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's all go. So basically, yeah. Oh, shit. So basically, yeah, just anything that you would say is on the emotional side. I'm literally talking about a true story, drama, something that's ever happened to you in the course of your work, or something that you did, or something that just made you think. You know, like in the other session before, someone said to me that they didn't give a fuck about yachting, and they weren't interested whatsoever, and then their friend took them out on a yacht for the first time, and they said they had really serious ADHD since they were a kid. And when her friend turned off the motor of the boat when they were out at sea, she felt like, for the first time in her whole life, like she didn't have ADHD, and she was like, my mind is completely at peace. Right? And just something like that, you know, before you get into all the other information and all the other stuff, something like that, like just to start, I'm not going to say a pitch, but to start a conversation with a potential client with something like that, it just changes everything. And honestly, I hate to say it, it's a massacre from there on. It's like, it's done, right? Like, as long as you don't fuck up the rest of it. In fact, you probably could fuck up the rest of it. But, you know, imagine you started, like, so listen, I've had ADHD since I was a kid. I don't care about boats. I'm not really interested in it. My friend took me out on one. We went out there. I was like, I don't really want to go. She turned off the motor, and my brain just went, whew, and it was the first time I ever heard myself think. So I'm not saying you're going to be able to extract this right now, but I am saying you do have to do this work, right? So hypothetically, now I'm not expecting that, right? Is there anything that's ever in the course of your career so far where you've gone, yeah, I remember that. That gives me goosebumps still. I know you got one, James. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be well polished yet. It just has to be, because the story polishes it, right? You haven't learned to tell it as a story yet, but that's the next step. But you've got to have something that just has natural goosebumps in it. And then what you do is you learn how to tell that as a story, so the goosebumps are 10 times bigger.
I mean, there's one story about 15 years ago. I was working as a sailing instructor on a beach in Turkey, and this same guy came to the beach club every year. He'd been coming for 10 years or something. He was a really, really good sailor. Guy in his probably late 50s at that point. He lost his sight about 8 years previously.
Wow.
I think it happened quite quickly, quite suddenly. And he would always stay in the same room in the hotel because he knew exactly how many steps it was from that
Wow.
to the beach bar, and from the bar to where the boats were,
That's amazing.
and to the reception, and to all this stuff. And he was incredible. And anyway, he comes down to the beach one day. The beach manager goes, James, I'd like you to take him out sailing. I go, yeah, cool, right. We've got a 2-person sailboat here, right? We go out, we go sailing, etc. And before we went out, I remember he would like run his hands all over the inside of the boat and go, oh, so this does this, and this does this, and this. He's like painting a picture in his head. And then we go out, attacking, we change direction all the time, we turn around, and we go to put the spinnaker up. Before I can say anything to him and tell him where it is, his hand is on it, and he's pulling it up, and
Wow.
and he's doing it by feel, fully by feel, without obviously being able to see anything. That was...
That's a fucking
that
brilliant
was a
story.
big, like, wow moment to me. It gets a little bit better as well. So the next day, he comes out to the beach. The beach manager goes, can you take him out? I go, yeah, of course. I'll get the boat ready. He goes, no, not that boat. He wants to take out a 1-person.
Totally different. Oh my God.
And I'm like, but there's 2 of us. How's that? That's not going to
Yeah.
work. Like, we're 2 guys who are about 80 kilos. That's just not going to make any sense. No, you have one, he voice.
That's amazing.
So I would, every 5 seconds or so, I'd turn around and say, hey, Dennis, you still, you know, right, okay, let's Techno. And he would do it, and he would roll Techno. A couple of times he'd go, boom, okay, boom, but he loved it, and he was brilliant. There was one point where he almost overtook me.
Wow.
Like, it was insane. First time sailing? Not his first time sailing, no. He was a really
Yeah.
good sailor. But he'd lost his sight, so he was totally blind. That was, like...
See, now look, that, and here's the thing, you've not told that story a lot, right? So imagine if you got to the point where you told that story 100 times. Think about how you could perfect it and make it have the right moments and the right. But what's great about it is, say for example, now let's bring this back to the whole group, otherwise guys, sorry. We had a really good one here. Did anyone have anything that they thought, that's actually got more to it than I thought? You guys? Did you guys come up with anything that you thought, that's not too bad, Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. If you nod, you're going to speak. No, go for it.
He will speak.
So I had a story which in English wouldn't make much sense.
Okay, that's okay. That's a good
So
excuse.
sorry about that. But she had a story about the situation in their company where they have a new colleague which was so proud of dealing with some technical problem with some of the printers or whatever in the office. After which another colleague prepared a big certificate or whatever for the award for the best printer guy in the company.
Oh, that's sweet.
Which is still there.
Oh, that's nice.
Proud to receive that award.
But I kind of like it shows. So interestingly, if you heard that story, right? Now here's the thing: these stories are not treated yet. Do you know what I mean by that? Like these are raw. Like I'm not expecting like fucking Walt Disney here. You know what I mean? Like, but there's something, right? Now imagine what our job next, if we had more time, would be to treat those stories, put them through a system where everything about it gets more powerful and more universal and more dramatic and more funny and more everything until that raw diamond is shining, right? And then once you've told that story 100 times, because like every good dad joke, you know, my dad only has like 5 jokes, right? But he told them all a lot of times. But he's good at telling them. Just a shame that we've been with him for so long. But you know, imagine then that was just one little story amongst loads of little stories that you had. You're communicating. So for me, when I hear that story about your office, I hear something about the culture of your office. I hear something about who you people are. Who am I dealing with here? I'm dealing with people who are humans. Like they're really human beings, right? They give a fuck and they acknowledge each other for giving a fuck. And that level of like passion is part of who you are. And I'm not saying you sit down with a client and say, hey, morning, I want to tell you, right, that's not how it goes. You might be like, and look, guys, there's a bit of poetic license here, right? You can be like, sorry, I'm a little bit late. You won't believe what just happened in the office, right? Yes, you're fucking lying, but that's selling as well, right? By all means, like, you know, as long as it did once happen, it could happen today, you know? I really love that. Do you mind, James, could you tell, just quickly, let's get James on this. So this is great, right? Now, guys, we haven't put these through any of the treatments yet. So bear in mind, none of these stories are like story ready. They're just what I would call insights, right? But just go for it, James. I mean, I only just met you, and you just came up with this. Well, you just told us this story, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'll do a condensed version of it, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so this was about 15 years ago. I was working for quite a well-known company as a dinghy instructor in one of the beach clubs. And there was this guy he's come back to the same club every year for 10 years. He was in his, as I say, late 50s probably, early 60s. And he very suddenly few years previously, lost his eyesight. And he always used to come to the same room because he knew exactly how many steps it was from his room to the bar, and from the bar to the beach where the boats were, to the reception, to every other part of the hotel, right? Actually, there's a part of the story I haven't told, Mark, which I'll get to in a minute. But he would come down, one day he came down to the beach, he said he wanted to go sailing. I'm like, oh, great, cool. Here's the boat. It was a two-person boat, and before we went out, he would reach into the boat, touch all the lines, and say, right, this is the spinnaker halyard, this is this, this is that. And I'm like, yeah, great. We go sailing, we're going upwind, and then we turn around, and we come to hoist the kite, and before I can tell him, pull the rope that's slightly to your left, his hand is on it, and he's already doing it. And then he trims the spinnaker completely by feel without being able to see it, which is just blows my mind at the time. Anyway, that finishes, we come in, great, sail. Next day he comes down, he wants to go sailing again. I'm like, oh, great, cool. This time he wants to do it in a laser dinghy. And I'm like, well, there's two of us. It's a one-person dinghy, we can't do this. No, you have one, I have one. And the guy follows my voice. So every 5 seconds I have to look back at him and go, right, we're going to attack now. Okay, we're going to turn around now. Okay, we're going to do this. And he gets hit by the boom a couple of times, but he learns to duck a bit lower and, he succeeds. That's the story I told. What I didn't tell you was that 3 days later we had a fire in the base and we had to evacuate everybody. Evacuating a blind man from a burning building is probably the scariest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. Fuck. But so here's the thing. What's underneath the story? Like, what's being communicated? For me, actually, over to you. What are you hearing that's not being said, literally, but is kind of coming across through that story? About the level of service, about maybe how easy these boats are to use, about the dedication. Like, do you see what I mean? What's great about storytelling is you get to say pages worth of shit that you would never, ever have the time to say because it's an essay, but you never have to say it because there's no need. Because the act that happened, the thing, explains it all. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a shortcut. It's like, don't worry about explaining how much, it's like, I get that you give an amazing amount of professional service here. This is a fucking, if people who are blind are happy to go sailing with you, then that tells me a lot about me as a first newbie. I'm like, yeah, go on then, fuck it. You're my guy, right? Now, how do you get these stories in? You've got to get the stories in seamlessly. That's the thing. You can't look like you're cocking and locking and loading to tell a story, right? It's got to get to the point where every story you've got just kind of, it just flows in and out of everything else. And that does come with practice. I can't necessarily teach you to do that. I can't say, you just have to keep telling those stories. Like my dad and his jokes, it's like, oh, fuck, here we go. And here's the thing, unless you're sick of your own story, you haven't told it enough. Like, if it works, keep fucking doing it, right? So, and here's the thing, you know how I said that, so I'll just tell you a really, really quick story here. So I was very lucky, like I said, failed DJ. I used to run this night at this club called Fabric in London, and what I did was, because I had no girlfriend and no friends, what you tend to find is people who have no girlfriend and no friends, they're very, very good at digital. So I basically used to look after the digital for celebrities. So I used to go, first of all, it was DJs and music. So I'd go to the Prodigy or the Chemical Brothers or Faithless, and I'd say, look, I want you to play my night at Fabric for free, and in return, I will look after all of your digital and fix it, because it's terrible, right? I'm old, so that was the thing then. And long story short, that company got bought by William Morris Endeavour. So if you ever watched, Entourage is about William Morris Endeavour. So I actually literally worked in that agency, and I was the head of chief digital officer. So my life, no exaggeration, was go and explain the internet to Lady Gaga. That was literally it, me trying to explain the fucking internet. Ah, hello, Mum. Oh, you can just turn that off, it's all right. So anyway, long story short, I was in the room when Christopher Nolan pitched Interstellar, right? because you've got to send the whole team in. And the way it works is at Warner Brothers, you get 15 minutes to explain the key insight behind the film, right? Then you get 15 minutes to explain how the insight comes to life as a story. That's interesting, right? So you get 15 minutes to explain the insight and 15 minutes to explain how that insight becomes a story, right? From an insight to a story. So he goes in, this is his insight. There are 3 known dimensions to the universe: space, up, down, left, right, time. And time is actually more powerful than space, because at the very furthest reaches of the galaxy, we know that we can't see any more space, but we know because of redshift theory that time is still out there. So space is extending into time, which means time is infinitely bigger and more powerful than space, right? Then gravity is the 3rd dimension that we know about, right? Gravity keeps everything pretty much workable, right? And gravity is so powerful, it's more powerful than space and time, because a black hole, which is infinite gravity, sucks in space, get this, also sucks in time. So if you see the film, the closer you get to the edge of a black hole, time starts to shift. So remember when they go down on that second planet, and they're down there for like 10 minutes, they come back, it's been 29 years. Yeah, oh shit, sorry, spoiler. Yeah. I was gonna say, definitely watch it if you haven't. But now he's explaining this. You can imagine all these executives in Warner Bros. Are like, right? And then, so he wants to make a film about what is in the center of a black hole, because he believes that in the center of a black hole, at the point of infinite gravity, there's another dimension that you can only experience there, but that we all experience all day, every day anyway. And actually, if you think about it, every single book, every single film, every single piece of music, everything, really, all of our experience really comes back to this other dimension that we haven't really given a name for, but it's love. Because you love people who are no longer in the same time as you. They might have died. You love people who are another part of the universe to where you are, right? And in the center of this gravitational black hole, you find this 4th dimension. That's what the film was about, right? Now, that's the insight. That's not the story. Do you see what I'm saying? The story is Matthew McConaughey has 2 kids, and he goes around, and he did it, and then he gets asked to go on this ship, and they go to 3 different planets. Do you see what I'm saying? So what I want you guys to do now is, I want you to dig deep. I can't do this work for you, this particular bit about finding the insights. You can imagine if I had presented all this. I'll send you this deck, by the way. But what I do, this is where it gets fucking awesome, right? Because once you've got an insight, basically what an insight is a goosebump. That's it. And right now, it doesn't have to be the biggest goosebump ever, right? Like, what makes Interstellar a good movie, whether you think it is or not, is the way the story turns the insight into goosebumps, not just goosebump, right? So what you do is you have to go into your life and your experiences. And I fucking bet I guarantee if you spent a day, and I would strongly suggest you do, digging up these stories, you won't be able to turn that tap off. You're going to start realizing you've got stories that you're like, oh my God, they're fucking everywhere, right? And then what happens is you start to actually look out for them. So as these things happen in real life, you're like writing them down, like, there's another story I'm going to tell, right? And the more of your pitch that you can translate into stories, the more it works. Because the more insight that cuts through and beyond and under the human rational mind, because the human rational mind is just scanning for danger, right? Yeah, this guy's lying. Yeah, we could probably get it cheaper. Da, da, da. What stories do is they just go underneath that. They just go under the radar. And it's just like, whoa. I don't know why, but I'm just really not feeling so. And what they do is they lessen that voice. So instead of someone scanning now for danger, they're now scanning for things that support their emotional state. Right? So your transfer isn't a transfer of information or data or even knowledge. Your transfer is a transfer of confidence and emotion, basically, feeling. You're selling a feeling, right? And then what you do, and if we had a lot more time, we would do this, is every story in the world, and this is Cinderella, but this is Fight Club. They all have the same 12 steps. And I'm not expecting you guys to like master every single one of these steps, but you should know what they are. And if I even took like your story there or like your story there, what you do is you take this small thing that has this kernel of truth in it, and you use this model to kind of pull each bit of it out so that each bit of it does a bigger job, right? And you can Google this stuff, just 12 steps of storytelling, hero's journey stuff, right? And at Vice, say for example, like we won 3 Oscars this year, we won 33 Emmys, we won a lot of shit. And all it is we just get something that gives us a bit of a goosebump and go, ooh, there's something there. That's an insight. That's emotional. It's not logical, it's not rational. It's saying lots quickly. And then we just put it through this model. And I'll send you this, and actually there's a whole, but basically in a nutshell, I wish I had time for this, I don't, do I? Do I? No, okay, that's that then. Anyway, nutshell of it is, what I can teach you now in this short time that we've had is to look for insights above data, information, and knowledge, right? Knowledge is good, by the way, knowledge is good. You should have the stories behind the information, yes. But insight, that's something that can't be commodified. Knowledge is something that anybody else can also have. Like, somebody else can know that the guy that invented this motor for this boat did this. Somebody else might know it. Good on them if they do. But no one else can have that story, right? And what your job is to do is pull as many of them as you possibly can. Go back, do a whole session with your teams. Do a whole session on your own where you start going, how did I get into this? Why did I stay in it? What were the moments when I really wanted to leave and didn't? What were the things that really gave me that, independently of money, that made me think, fuck, I love doing this, or I hate it, whatever. Just get emotional to that point of insight and then stick it through this process. I wish I could tell you this whole thing now because it's a big thing, but I'll send you the deck. And basically what it comes down to is, say, for example, with yours, let's just choose one of these steps, right? Crossing the threshold. Now, that's one of the steps of storytelling. What it means is doing something that you can't go back to. So it means taking a step that means you can't go back, right? It's taking a risk. So I'm getting told to finish. So say, for example, when you went out on that boat, just the two of you, once you're out on the ocean, you're out in the fucking ocean. You've crossed the threshold. Do you see what I mean? So your job then is to beef up the drama of that bit. But here's the final thing I'll say, guys. Insights are up to you. I don't know your personal stories, but I guarantee you, the more, all of the studies show, the more you bring yourself and your personal stories to your sales pitch, the more you win. It's literally as simple as that. And ironically, that seems like the opposite of being professional. Isn't that crazy? We get told, no, professionalism is leaving yourself at the door at 9 o'clock in the morning when you walk in the office. It's almost like you go, no, that's not me. Now this is professional me. And the irony is, if you keep real you will win. You will massacre all these robots that are trying to be professional them, right? It will be effortless. So look, I really, really wish we'd had a bit more time. I'm going to send you this. This is quite simple. All you do is, it's just a bunch of 12 different questions. How could this moment in the story come alive even more? And you'll find every story can be extended and expanded. And then you've got the insight in the middle. The insight becomes more powerful. So look, thank you so much. I'll send this over. Hit me on LinkedIn or something like that. And thanks for doing that. Cheers, guys. I've got to go. Cheers.